forged on the gridiron in September. Perfected in the magic of March. For the fans who love the crunch of the pads, prefer a dunk, and expect nothing but the best. It's Bigger Ten. Here's Steve Deace.
Greetings and Merry Christmas to all of you. I'm Steve Deace. Welcome to this week's episode of Bigger Ten, joined, as always, by my co-host, the one and only Aaron McIntire. Good to see you, Aaron. How are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Other than the complete and total implosion of my favorite college football team, I'm doing great. Couldn't be better. We're fine here. We're all fine here. How are you? Let's get to it. Our big five on Bigger Ten, the top 5 topics that we're going to address here going on, Big Ten related. And let's start with the rule change. It was actually just announced shortly before we began taping this week's episode. The Big Ten is going to change the eligibility rule. Remember, you had to play a minimum of 6 games to be eligible for the Big Ten championship this year. That rule just changed by the Big Ten's athletic directors in order to accommodate Ohio State. Now, I think that it was iffy, maybe 50-50, that this was going to get done about 48 hours ago, until the news from Indiana also emerged, and the Hoosiers have already canceled the old Oak and Bucket game against Purdue this weekend. They and Purdue both having COVID issues. Indiana's football program is on pause right now. And so if there were any athletic directors that were on the fence, and no one of them, not Michigan's Ward Manuel, he held a press conference yesterday where he was effusive in his praise and promotion of the Ohio State Buckeyes. I kind of found it a tad emasculating. That's a topic for another day. But if you were on the fence about this and the precedent it would set by clearly changing the rules in order to orchestrate a desired outcome, which is to get Ohio State in the playoff, which I think, Aaron, is frankly the number one reason we're even having a Big Ten football season at all. Yep. When Indiana put its program on pause, and now you don't know that they would be able to even play next weekend in a Big Ten championship game, if you're the Big Ten, you cannot go through all of whatever the hell this season was to have 2-win Penn State and 2-win Michigan State playing, the winner of that game, playing in the Big Ten championship, right? You cannot do that. So if we don't know if there were any, but if there were any ADs on the fence about this, when news came out that Indiana's program was going on pause, I think that pretty much cinched it. So what are your thoughts? Do you think the right decision was made here?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it shows a lack of foresight on the part of the Big Ten. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy we're even having a football season, even if it is just because of Ohio State. I'm happy that we got a football season. I'm happy that we got to sit down on Saturdays this fall and watch some Big Ten football. But I do think this 6-game rule in general just showed a lack of foresight. You had to know at least some games were going to be canceled. I didn't anticipate nearly as many games being canceled as what there were, but again, hindsight being 2020, it probably should have. Hindsight being 2020, you probably should have seen that in the year 2020. So is this going? I really haven't had too much of an opportunity to look into this, other than knowing that they're just changing the 6-game requirement, and essentially it's going to be going by win percentage now. Yes. I guess. Yeah. So that's conveniently probably going to be helping Ohio State well on the Western Division, assuming that Northwestern and Illinois' game doesn't get canceled. Probably not going to have much of an impact over on the other side of the Mississippi for the most part. So I think it was the right change. I mean, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? You already have a shortened season. You did this, let's just be honest, you did this because you thought your big blue blood school in Ohio State was going to have a chance, and they do have a chance to make it to the college football playoff and potentially bring home another national championship for themselves and for the Big Ten. So why not let them get as much on film as they possibly can right now? I don't really have a fan bone to pick with Ohio State, because right now in the Big Ten, they are the rising tide that lifts all boats. Let's just be honest about that. It seems weird to just be like, yeah, let them run roughshod, but that's the reality of the situation right now. And so I don't have any strong moral objection to this on any level.
Neither do I. And I think you said it right. I mean, they're the sun of our solar system. I hate it, but it's true too. There's lots of things I don't like, but they are also true, and I have to abide by the fact they're true. Otherwise, I'm engaged in delusion. And the reality is, they are the sun and the moon and the stars of the Big Ten. The rest of us in this league, for now, until somebody rises up to change it, we just exist to fill out Ohio State's schedule. Right now, there's a bigger chasm between them and the next best team in the Big Ten than there is even between Clemson and the next best team in the ACC. So, given the fact that the playoff is what drives all of this, it's totally subjective. It's not a playoff anyway. It's an invitational. So the whole process is subjective. Then the Big Ten made a subjective decision to cancel the season in the first place. So I don't know why we just wouldn't continue on with the subjectivism and say, let's all be consenting adults. We're only playing out this season because Ohio State is Ric Flair. And everybody else had the chance to walk that aisle, go into the squared circle, and see if you could, get a pin on them. You can't, and so we got to send Ric Flair here. He's our champ. Send him off to, greener pastures, and that's what this is all about. So be it. As a side note, though, do we know what the Big Ten's COVID protocols are? Remember how this was all spelled out for us, right? It was all talked about, and we talked. And Michigan is saying that by Big Ten protocols, they could have actually played against Ohio State on Saturday. They did not violate.
Well, howdy doody.
The game was not called off by the Big Ten. It was called off by them. Ohio State did this the week before against Illinois. Wisconsin did that against Nebraska. And remember, we were told we were going to do this daily antigen testing. What was the benefit of the daily antigen testing? Do you remember?
Among them was the fact that you knew who was positive and who was not before they started infecting all the rest of the locker room.
So we wouldn't have to do what that's gone on in all these other leagues. The waves of contact traces, right?
Yep.
Michigan, from what I'm told right now, is below 50 scholarship available players if it would have played on Saturday, and that's almost entirely contact tracing. Then, what the hell did we do any of this for? So in the end, we came up with the system that what it seems to me, Aaron, is that we delayed our season and didn't learn any lessons from other leagues. Look at the ACC, SEC, and Big 12. Most of their teams are going to complete their schedules. And we're the ones that had the benefit of hindsight. We had the ability to see what everybody else was doing that worked and didn't work, or in the NFL. We are limping to the finish line. Who the hell knows how many games we're even going to play this weekend? We got the worst of both worlds. We don't know. We put all these restrictions in place that are very draconian, but we just saw teams just flaunt them all year long, right? Well, we're just not going to play. Oh, isn't that a forfeit? No. What? And then it was, well, we're going to do this daily antigen testing so that we know every day who's positive or not. We don't have to do all these contact traces. We saw waves of contact tracing in Illinois, waves of contact tracing in Ohio State, waves of contact tracing in Illinois, now waves of contact tracing at Michigan. Does any of this, on another channel, we have been fairly steadfastly covering this virus and pandemic on a daily basis and getting paid well for it, correct?
Correct.
We're fairly informed, right?
Yeah.
On this topic. Do you know what the hell the Big Ten is doing here? Because I sure as hell don't know.
No. And imagine for a moment if you had 14 different voices in your head telling you to do 14 different things at the same time. And that's essentially what Kevin Warren has been as a commissioner for the Big Ten, because as has been established, I think, at least from prima facie evidence, I think what's been established is that he's basically a tool of the president's right now. And I think this has been a great example of how you've just allowed 14 different institutions, really that's what we're talking about, to pull and kind of do their own thing 14 different ways. Whatever they feel, again, the word subjectivism, whatever they feel they want to do at any given time, that's just kind of what they do. And it's a cause for chaos, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. It's an even greater cause, though, for even teams like Nebraska, who you knew before the season wanted to play. They've had a terrible season so far, and yet they keep playing. So good on them, good on all the schools who have actually been doing their best to follow the protocols, doing their best to get games in, doing their best to actually make a season of this. And for some of the other teams, Wisconsin, we might be able to throw them in there. Michigan, we can throw them in there. Ohio State, it was their own decision, as you said, not to play against Illinois. Come on. You wanted a season, or at least we thought you did, and it's just making for chaos right now. Nevertheless, Ohio State still might make it into the playoff.
Let's go to the team that used to be Ohio State's rival, and just frankly right now is their whipping boy, and that is Michigan. A strange press conference yesterday held in Ann Arbor, including Michigan Athletic Director Ward Manuel, Michigan football coach Jim Harbaugh together on a Zoom call with the press in order to talk about the game being canceled because of Michigan's COVID issues. By the way, let me say this. I as someone who's got some sources here, Michigan absolutely has COVID issues. So this idea that this is some kind of conspiracy to not play, while I would be fine with it, because I just want the season to end and don't want to go through another humiliation against Ohio State, Michigan absolutely has issues. Now, where I do think it gets conspiratorial is the optics you've seen the last few days of Michigan doing everything it can to play. Michigan is known for quite some time, I believe. My opinion. Michigan is known for several days it could not play the game on Saturday. And I think just went through this exercise because of Kirk Herbstreit's comments last week about waving the white flag and kind of felt like it needed to be shown doing everything it could possibly do. So I think there were definitely political optics where that was concerned, but I can tell you for a fact I know Michigan has COVID issues. So Michigan's not playing. The AD and the coach are there. Jim Harbaugh is the only coach in the entire Power 5, Aaron, out of that's 65 teams, if you include Notre Dame, that doesn't have a contract beyond next season. Kind of a high-profile gig, right? Coaching football
Just
at Michigan, just a tad, a smidge. And this has been much bandied about. The media is there. You don't have to have your extension figured out now. Do you at least say, "Hey, Jim's our coach next year, and we're gonna get this thing legally figured out"? But no ifs, ands, or buts. Jim Harbaugh's coach in Michigan next year. Neither Ward Manuel nor Jim Harbaugh wanted to say that yesterday. Went out of their way not to say that yesterday. After they first tried to tell the media that topic was off limits, and then pretty much every question they got was about that topic. When you consider the fact signing day is just around the corner, right? Jim Harbaugh is probably aware of that. Do you think that's fair?
I think so, yeah.
Ward Manuel played football at Michigan. He was a highly recruited athlete himself back in the day. Think he's familiar with an entity known as signing day. Think he might know that that's coming.
Just a little bit.
All right.
Yeah.
So with that just around the corner, and Michigan having a top 10 class that you would envision there are players other schools might be interested in, right? Not saying anything about this at all before signing day, to me, there's only two options here. And that's why I want to go to you, because I'm kind of incestuous where this concerns. Where this is concerned, it's my team, but maybe you've got a different view being on the outside of it. Because I only see two options, that these guys are playing Russian roulette with this program, just being idiots. We're doing the red bandana scene from the Deer Hunter, but just, sitting around the big house doing it. Or if you look at the timetable here, once you get past signing day, and Ward Manuel said, hey, we'll have this conversation after the season ends following December 19th. Well, that's after signing day. There's a recruiting dead period. The NFL, by then, there's no hurry then, right? The recruiting dead period is done. There's no hurry then. And so you're in the time when the NFL season would end. You're not, and so if Jim wants to move on and look at other options, he can do that. You're also not opening your job up right now. So if you have some high-profile candidates, they're not getting questioned about it right now. It's like a Louisville, Scott Satterfield, South Carolina situation, right? Nobody's getting questioned about it while they're playing out their seasons. So you just ride this puppy out. Hope you get enough of this class that just wants to play for Michigan and sign, because you're moving on, and you just can't say that yet. I don't know which other option it would be. Can you think of another option?
I think, what do you always say? Most men don't finish well. I mean, this is based on some of the things that you've told me. What is going on at Michigan right now is just a complete and total, what did you call it? Chernobyling. Mm-hmm. What's being determined right now is whatever the fuel was to cause this Chernobyling, just how long the half-life is here until things can get irradiated. I think that's the right word. Because I think what's going on right now is that Harbaugh just probably doesn't really care that much. I mean, he's lost his team. I think that's easy to see. He's lost his team. There have been multiple instances of tumult amongst his coaching staff, not just this year, but in years past as well. What does he have going for him? What's he got going for him? And so I just don't think he cares and realizes the damage that just not making a decision right now is and can do for his team. Now, you could also say, well, he's already done the damage. How much worse can it get? Well, it can always get worse. It is the year 2020 after all. I just think I go back to, what was it? 2014. My coach, Kirk Ferentz, made the infamous "That's football" comment after losing a heart-wrenching game to Nebraska, who they have not lost to since. That's football. It was a disappointing season after a few years after the cratering of the 2011 season. And that was about as close as Kirk Ferentz, at least in this decade, has gotten to being fired, at least in my estimation. As close to being on his way out as anything. But he was given one more year. And we know what happened that next year. They went undefeated, soft schedule, what have you. But they went undefeated. That was an answer. That was an answer that he can still get the job done. How in the world? I just don't see it. I didn't really see it that much with Kirk Ferentz back then, but there was a longer track record, at least with Iowa, of being able to establish that culture every single year. What culture, what identity does Michigan have? They don't. And once you're in year 5 or 6, whatever it is.
It's year 6, yeah.
If you haven't established that yet, you're never going to.
Yeah.
You're never going to. So I think it's Jim Harbaugh is on the way out right now. It's just that he doesn't care when or how that happens.
I think what's happened here is Ward Manuel's put let's call it incentive-laden. How about you like that euphemism?
Sure. Yeah.
An incentive-laden contract that is more in Michigan's favor with little to no buyout and a substantial salary decrease. And then you clean house with your coaching staff. And I think Jim has decided, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to move on to the NFL, and we're just not going to announce it right now to get through signing day, and NFL jobs aren't technically open yet. The season is still going on, and Michigan's like, well, let's not make it official yet because we've maybe back-channeled a couple of candidates we want to hire, but
it's official, but not Facebook official.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yes, that's what I think has occurred here, or this is some of the worst management I've ever seen. So let's pray if you're a Michigan fan, it's not that. Now, you talked about who's got some answers. Let me tell you who's got some answers this year. It's Tom Allen in Indiana. I mean, this is your Big Ten Coach of the Year, guys. They smothered Wisconsin over the weekend on defense. Looked like they Wisconsin, frankly. They went in there with their backup quarterback, Jack Tuttle, and just played more physical football, better defense, controlled the line of scrimmage, won a low-scoring game. They've now beaten Wisconsin this year. They've beaten Michigan for the first time since 1987. They beat Penn State. These are legit wins. And the adoration his players show for him. I don't know how you cannot notice that either. This has been no fluke this season. Now, whether they can sustain this, right? I mean, I heard Tom Fornelli over at CBS Sports on his Cover 3 podcast say, hey, it's a great year, but how often is Indiana going to catch Penn State and Michigan being 2-win teams? He's right about that, but Indiana is one of the reasons that Michigan and Penn State are 2-win teams, right? Okay, so who knows how sustainable this is? Particularly Rutgers is building a respectable program. Mel Tucker's got a couple of nice wins in year 1 at Michigan State. And you have to think at least one of Michigan and Penn State won't be this bad again next year. At least one of them will return to, water will find its level, right? But for this season, no question about it, brother, this has been legit. And the best season Indiana football's had since at least 1987, if not going all the way back to their last Big Ten championship team in 1967.
Yeah, from the Iowa fan perspective, Indiana seems like it's always been, at the very least, annoying. But this year, there's something different about it. They are not annoying, and I won't even say respectable because I don't think that shows them enough respect. They're a legitimate football team. You don't just waltz into Wisconsin and Wisconsin, as you put it. You don't just do that unless there's something there with your team that is actually tangible, that it's actually terra firma on which to build a program. And it almost, to me, and it's not quite a one-to-one analogy, kind of reminds me what Matt Campbell has done with Iowa State to some degree. Just
That's a good analogy.
On a little bit lesser of a stage, just because of the dynamics of the Big Ten and which division Indiana is in. But you look at the culture that they've built there, and you look now at the results, at least this year, and you know what? If he sticks around and he can continue to either raid the transfer portal or put a couple of nice winning seasons together, I won't say the sky is the limit because I think Ohio State's the limit. That's going to be their measuring stick.
Right.
But you mentioned Rutgers up and coming. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to shove it in your face, Steve, but Michigan looks like it's on the downswing. So nature abhors a vacuum there. So who knows? There might be room in that division for Indiana to have a little bit of staying power, and that'll be at least fun to watch as long as you're not the ones playing them. So hats off to Tom Allen.
He's a Hoosier native too. And he is kind of in Indiana Midwestern earnest, Tom Allen, right? Like, yep. And so I bring that up because if he does this a couple more times, or even one more time, or hell, this one time, some of these other schools like a USC may come open this year or next year. But could you see them? He's the persona of the coach USC would hire. I don't see that.
Nope.
Right? He's a Hoosier dude. So I mean, I could see him being around there for a while as well. All right, let's get to some basketball. Big Ten ACC Challenge is underway. Here's the slate of games. You've had a few cancellations, okay? But you looked at what happened last night. The Big Ten went 6-1, and if it weren't for that Purdue meltdown up by 20 at Miami, and then Miami finished the game on a 31-10 run. Take that game away, and it was a dominant night for the Big Ten. Duke has, I think, seen enough of the Big Ten. They got housed by Michigan State last week, and now it was Illinois' turn. Iowa put up 93 on North Carolina without even getting a typical Luka Garza game, let alone a great one. I think that's bad news for the rest of the conference. Minnesota came back against what's not that great of a Boston College team to win in overtime, but still that's a win. Ohio State, Notre Dame went on a couple of huge runs in this game, and the Buckeyes still pulled it out. Last year's Buckeye team was good, but they would not have beaten anybody with a pulse if they needed 90 points. They were able to do it this year. But the two other games I want to draw people's attention to. How about Rutgers putting it on Syracuse? For those of you who are longtime Big East basketball, old school Big East basketball fans, you ever think you'd live to see the day that Rutgers puts it on Syracuse by double digits? But they did. And then how about that Penn State game? Now, this was a team that people that had pegged 12th, 13th in our league fired the coach right before the year. They go on the road. Now, they just beat Seton Hall, too. They go on the road and just name the score against a ranked Virginia Tech team. They started out something like 17-3 or something in that game. A very impressive opening night for the Big Ten. They're already 6-1. Tonight's games, Indiana, Florida State. Big test for the Seminoles, but also Indiana. They're a box of chocolates, man. Night to night, you don't know who you're going to get. Maryland and Clemson, I think that's a game that Maryland can win. NC State, Michigan called off. COVID problems for Michigan or for NC State. COVID issues at Michigan State and Virginia, so that game's not being played. Georgia Tech coming off a win over Kentucky goes to Nebraska. Northwestern favored against the Fighting Jeff Capels, and unfortunately, Louisville and Wisconsin is called off. So, your thoughts on what we've seen so far from the Big Ten ACC Challenge, Aaron?
Yeah, I was shocked. Last night when I was just perusing in-play opportunities on my chosen sports wagering app, and I saw Virginia Tech at 5-1 odds to beat Penn State. And I was like, "What the heck? This must be a mistake." Tried to jump on it. I think Penn State was up like 30, almost 30 points at that point. That's unheard of against Virginia Tech, which is, has been a solid and respectable and very, very good program now for the better part of the last decade. So that was a huge thing. And Penn State they took Seton Hall to overtime. I think Seton Hall ended up beating them, but still, I mean, they hit a clutch shot at the end of the game against, I can't remember the team that they played right before Seton Hall. So Penn State probably got to be the surprise team in the Big Ten so far this year. Looking at the rest of the slate of games as well, you just look at the scores there. 83, 80, 80, 90, 75.
Meaning we're not making these teams put them in a phone booth and playing Big Ten slugfest basketball. We're getting up and down the floor, playing ACC basketball and still beating them with that style. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just it's fun to watch any of these teams. It's fun to watch a lot of scoring. That's what basketball.
I mean,
is
Rutgers pushing 80, almost got to 80 against Syracuse's vaunted matchup zone defense.
Yeah,
how about that?
Yeah, and that's coming off of last season, I believe, when Iowa actually had Syracuse for their matchup in the ACC Big Ten Challenge and just shellacked them as well. So maybe it's an early season thing, or maybe the Big Ten is just that good. I think the Big Ten is just that good. I have reason to believe that. I think we would have seen that earlier this March. And I can't wait to see it this coming March as well. But it's a lot of fun to watch. And, I think I said a few weeks ago, I'm not sure if we're going to see quite as much of the night-to-night just slugfest and just night-to-night carnage in the Big Ten. We'll see how tonight goes with round 2 of the Big Ten ACC Challenge. But I might have to revise that statement because it looks like we are actually quite almost as strong as we were last year as well.
I think it's better. Because I think the skill level is better overall and deeper. And conference play begins this weekend. I think we need to have a conversation about whether 13-7, 14-6 might win this league or get you a share of a championship, given the depth. Let's go back to football for one more matter. All right. Hey, I think, you know me, no one's going to put more heat on Jim Harbaugh than I am, right? Okay, so you can talk about him or what's Lovie Smith's future at Illinois.
Or Scott Frost.
Or Scott Frost in Nebraska. We're probably a year away from having that conversation, and Nebraska fans hope that a year from now we don't have to. But is it time to have a conversation about Jeff Brom at Purdue? All right, let me share a couple of numbers here. He's never won more than 7 games. He only has 1 winning season. That was his first year in 2017. They went 7-6. And he's just 19-25 overall. Is it time to have a conversation there about what's going on there at Purdue? I mean, we're talking about a program that we saw under Joe Tiller compete for Big Ten championships, right? So, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm more inclined to give Brom a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. Now, as I do that, though, you can say, well, last year they didn't know they were going to be out with out Rondale Moore for the whole season. They haven't really developed a quarterback yet. This year, it's the old one-off year as well. Those are all reasons, or are they excuses?
Yeah.
Like if the athletic director called Jeff Brom into his office and said, so what's the deal here? Why are you 19-25 overall? And he listed off the things that I just listed to you. Is that going to sound to the athletic director like reasons, legitimate reasons, or excuses? And that's kind of in the eye of the beholder there. But that's, I know the defense has been a huge question mark for Purdue. They fired their defensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken, over the offseason. They got a new one there as well. I would say still.
And it's Bobby Diaco who inspires no confidence.
Really, Bob? Yeah. Oh man, that's unfortunate. But I would say one more season, and if it's a losing season, like a couple games below 500 next year, when you've got a full schedule ahead of you, then that's a cause for you. And then you start thinking about, I think the last couple of seasons, not including this one, but the couple preceding, there were a couple of head-scratching losses in the offseason, the non-conference slate of games for Purdue as well. Those are things that just make you scratch your head.
While losing to Eastern Michigan at home, you're talking about last year?
Yeah.
How about, he could have had his alma mater, the Louisville job 2 years ago, right? Turned it down. And he was a big-time hotshot coach. How many hot lists would he be on for the coaching carousel right now around the country? So maybe you give him a COVID year, fine, but I think that might be one to watch over the next 12 months. That maybe the shine has come off of that one here in real time pretty fast. All right, we'll come back, and it's our weekly game of Big Ten Would You Rather next. All right, let's get to it. This week's edition of Big Ten Would You Rather here on Bigger Ten. Aaron, I ask you, would you rather, if you were Jim Harbaugh, go back to the NFL or take one more shot at finally winning a title at your alma mater in 2021 with no more Justin Fields at Ohio State? What would you rather do?
Go to the NFL, man. Just go to the NFL. I mean, I feel like this is... I feel like this is asking me if we were at a seedy country bar some night, Steve, and I took my shirt off, got all oiled up somehow, and started dancing on the bar, and you gave me the option of, hey, Aaron, you can go to the hotel and sleep it off, or you can stay here and try or you can try break dancing on the bar. Which one do you choose? I mean, stop embarrassing yourself. This is what it is. It's an embarrassment at this point.
Yikes. Okay. Enough said.
Next one. Would you rather be Jeff Brom or PJ Fleck right now?
Oh, PJ Fleck. Yeah. I've got a better record. I've already had my breakthrough season. We just won 11 games, right? I beat a national program in a bowl game from the SEC in Auburn. And I beat Wisconsin, my big rival, and I'm at the State University of. So with all those advantages, I'd much rather be PJ Fleck right now. No question. Good. How about the fact that we are even asking that? Would we have predicted that at the start of the year?
Not really.
Not really. Not really. All right, for you, would you rather get rid of divisions in Big Ten football or realign them?
I've thought about this. My original answer used to be, I don't want to get rid of them. Maybe realign them, because as an Iowa fan, I know that most years, my only shot of making the Big Ten championship game is going to be with these divisions the way they currently are. Having said that, I think the right answer though is to just get rid of divisions. I think you're going to, as a conference, you're going to put yourself in the best position every year to be able to have a true contender after that title game for the college football playoff, if they are truly playing the second best team in your league. Having said that as well, college football playoff expands. It's probably going to be a moot point anyway. But I'd say at this point, get rid of the divisions. I'd like to see what that looks and how that plays out, at least for a little while.
Dude, Iowa State is going to the Big 12 championship game. There's no divisions. They finished first overall. They beat Oklahoma and Texas in the same season for the first time ever.
Is that good?
Yeah. If Iowa State can manage that, Iowa in a no division could make a Big Ten championship game. Okay. I think it's much better to get rid of the divisions and then just have the top two teams at the end of the year.
Here's the question that really needs to be asked or looked at anyway. Formulaic schedules, more akin to what the NFL does. Mm-hmm. That's if you're going to get rid of the divisions, then you got to bring that in as well.
I agree, because that's the other reason you get rid of divisions is you want some more. You want to get rid of a schedule imbalance, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Final one is for you. Would you rather have the duo of Garza or Wieskamp or Coburn and Osunmu?
That's a very good question, man. That's a tough answer, and here's why. Because when the matchup is right, Coburn is unstoppable physically, right? He's just unstoppable physically. The problem is the matchup has to be right. Meaning a matchup where the pace takes advantage of his size as opposed to gets up and down the floor. The issue with the Garza-Wieskamp duo is neither one of those guys, though, is a slasher. And to some degree requires assistance to get into their offense. where Io can just take over a game himself, right?
Yep.
And just go baseline to baseline. How about I'd rather have Io and Garza? Can I make that call? And so does everybody else, right? Wow. I guess I'm going to take Io and Coburn only because that's the duo where one guy can generate his own offense or offense for everybody around him without assistance. But that's a tough ask right there, brother. That was a good question.
It's the old conversation about would you rather have a good guard or a good forward or a guard who can create offense? And that's basically what that is.
All right, we'll come back with our final segment here in just a moment. This week's Twitter poll results, we asked you, should the Big Ten change the minimum games played rule to win the championship, specifically to help boost Ohio State's college football playoff hopes? This was closer than I thought it was going to be. But 52.7% said yes, 47.3% said no. In fairness, I did ask this question before we got the news about Indiana. Right? So maybe that moves the number a few digits, but are you surprised the vote amongst the fans that follow us was that close?
Not really. I think there's a large segment of folks who just want to see something novel this year. Can't blame you.
And I get that too.
I can't blame you for that. And seeing an Indiana Northwestern Big Ten championship game would definitely fit the description of novel.
I get that too. You bet. All right, this week's question of the week from FD Territory says, I'm starting to wonder if other teams in the conference are uninterested in being Ohio State's football prop.
Why would you say that?
Who would that be? First of all, Michigan's clearly not. If Jim Harbaugh is coming back, I don't think he is, but if he comes back, Michigan clearly has told you that at least for another year, at least, they have no problem being the sub to Ohio State's dom in that relationship. So the rest of the conference, I have a solution, Aaron, if you're sick of it. Would you like to hear what it is?
I think I know what it is.
Yeah, you could beat them.
Yeah.
Try that. Could you try that? What do you think? What do you think of that solution? Try beating them.
That would require effort and making good hires and, doing a game plan and just being competitive generally, having a competitive spirit.
Does Ohio State, have they won the Big Ten championship every single year in the history of the conference?
Feels like it, but no.
Lately it has felt like it, but they're going to be the first team probably ever to win 4 straight undisputed championships, okay? But they don't even have the most Big Ten championships all time, which means there have been plenty of seasons they haven't won, which tells you that this program is beatable, right? At some point, right?
Yeah.
Then try beating them, do that. That would be kind of my answer to that question. If you're sick of taking it from somebody, punch back, hit back. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Bigger 10. Everybody have a Merry Christmas. We'll be back again next week. For Aaron McIntire, I'm Steve Deace, and we will see you then.